The State Department Inspector General has announced an investigation or review into the Biden administration's haphazard withdrawal from Afghanistan. He has notified both the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House and the Senate of the investigation, and that's just one agency where the Inspector General is looking into Afghanistan. Joining me now to talk more about this is U.S. Congressman Mike Waltz. He's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and a decorated Special Forces officer with multiple combat tours in Afghanistan, the Middle East, and Africa. He serves the 6th Congressional District of the Sunshine State. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Tony. Good to be with you as always.
What's your first reaction to the Inspector General, the State Department, looking into the withdrawal from Afghanistan in the various aspects?
Well, I welcome it if it's an actual investigation. That said, you already have the State Department spokesman saying, no, it's not an investigation. It's more of a project, whatever that means. But the concerning piece is, I think this is going to fall into the kind of necessary but not sufficient category, because the scope of it, at least as it's described in the letter to Congress, is really focused on the SIV, which is a special immigrant visa process for our interpreters, and the resettlement effort. It's not really looking at the big policy decisions which led to the debacle. For example, who decided on September 11th, which was clearly a politically driven deadline, and then moved it to the 31st? Who made the decisions that, despite clear evidence that many Americans were being left behind that wanted to leave, not to mention our allies, right? Who left the Americans behind? Who decided to get all of our military equipment out before we had gotten our people out? And so we all know, and that's increasingly becoming clear, that those decisions were made in the White House, that Biden ignored his generals on multiple occasions. And that's the real investigation that needs to take place. So while this is welcome from state, I don't think it's going to get to the real crux of those issues, unfortunately.
Now, according to press reports, other agencies will be conducting, inspector generals from other offices will launch their own investigations. And reportedly including the Department of Defense and the Special General, the Inspector General for the Afghan reconstruction. Do you anticipate them covering any of these essential issues?
Well, from what I've seen, the Defense Department Inspector General is primarily looking at the botched drone strike that ended up killing 10 civilians. I hope that gets to the bottom of what type of, if any, but I believe it existed, political pressure there was to rush that strike in the wake of losing our 13 Marines, soldiers, and sailors, so that the administration could be seen as taking action and looking tough and being effective. I hope that gets to the bottom of that. But again, the big decisions, as Biden has said, the buck stops with him. And of course, then he proceeded to blame all kinds of other people. That needs to happen. And I think that's frankly only going to happen in terms of those White House decisions when we get the House back in 2022.
Congressman Waltz, one of the issues that you have raised was the $82 billion dollars worth of equipment was left behind. I don't see that on the agenda of any of these inspector generals.
That's right, and that's another issue that I think we're going to have to get at with congressional oversight. And in fairness, Tony, that much of that equipment was left for the Afghan military to continue fighting, and as they crumbled. My question is why we didn't reverse course, apply air power, and begin taking that equipment out when it became obvious that the intelligence estimates were wrong and our estimates about the Afghan capabilities were wrong. And, were those decisions recommended and rejected, or were they not recommended at all? And then the other key issue is Bagram Air Base. Those are things, you're right, that aren't in what we've seen so far that these inspector generals are looking at. But I tell you what, I am not going to rest until I get to the bottom of it, because those 13 dead soldiers and all of those veterans out there who sacrificed so much deserve it.
Congressman, that brings up a very important aspect when you talk about the intelligence. When did our intelligence, military intelligence, other intelligence, determine that the Afghan army was going to crumble? There are some reports to suggest that they knew this was going to happen more quickly than they were projecting, but they didn't want to publicly acknowledge that. And so, as you said, this material was left behind, knowing it was going to fall into the hands of the enemy. But more importantly, we're going to lose human lives as a result of that.
Well, that was my question to both Secretary Austin and General Milley. Okay, we do have reporting out there and reports on the record that the intelligence community changed its estimate that they thought the Afghan military would at least last until the end of this year. Okay, let's take that at face value. Then that means $82 billion worth of equipment was going to fall into enemy hands at the end of 2021 versus in August, and that would have made it somehow better? No. And so I didn't see any kind of action to incorporate that. But also, once we saw cities starting to fall and the military starting to crumble, why didn't we reapply American air power to buy time, to get our people out, perhaps even to stem the tide and stiffen the spine of the Afghan military? Because, Tony, what we have now is a Taliban caliphate, just like we had an ISIS caliphate under the Obama administration. And we have a terror superstate on our hands, and the intelligence is clear that al-Qaeda fully intends to reconstitute and to hit us again if given the chance. And as you and I have talked about, the Taliban equals al-Qaeda. They are one and the same. They pledge allegiance to each other. And we have yet to receive a fulsome, classified briefing on how we're going to deal with that from a counterterrorism standpoint.
Yeah, and they are well equipped, better than anything else we've seen or met in the past. Congressman Waltz, I want to shift gears for the remaining few minutes we have together here, because China has tested a nuclear-capable hypersonic missile. The White House saying, "Hey, look, we welcome stiff competition, but frankly, Congressman, when it comes to national defense, I don't want competition. I want to dominate."
Yeah, that's right, Tony. I'm not fear-mongering. I'm not overstating the case here. But let me tell you what, this was a Sputnik moment. This is a game changer, and let me tell you why. So normally a ballistic missile, when it launches, we pick up the launch and it's traveling on a predictable arc. It passes high into space. Our satellite can pick it up. We can figure out where it's going, and then we can address it with our missile defenses. It's difficult. It's like hitting a bullet with a bullet, as it's flying at Mach speed, but we are able to do that right now. The hypersonic missiles are a maneuverable bullet, and they don't travel on a predictable arc. They can fly around our radar so that we can't pick them up at all, and they travel at such speeds, up to Mach 20. That we can't shoot them down. So basically, we are defenseless. This is a first strike weapon that the Chinese have, and the only way we're going to be able to deal with it is to accelerate the development of our system so that we go back to a deterrent posture. But between now and then, we are incredibly exposed. The other piece, Tony, is this is a culmination of 20 years of the Chinese stealing our technology left, right, and center from our universities, from our research institutes, through cyber, even through mergers and acquisitions, which Wall Street are all too happy to facilitate, of key technologies. And the chicken's coming home to roost. The Chinese are passing us in many areas, and we can't take for granted that we would win a future war anymore. And that should scare everyone. And we need a real wake-up call in this country.
And the average American doesn't realize it, but is facilitating this every time they pick up that product from China or they go to the movies where China is now dominating and controlling Hollywood.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And as we've discussed, it is our money through Hollywood, through sports, through Wall Street, and through Walmart and Amazon. Every time you pick up a made in China and you send your money, that over there, you are fueling their military buildup, their manufacturing base at the expense of ours. their Belt and Road Initiative, which is buying up infrastructure, including the Panama Canal all around the world. We've got to put a stop to it and bring that manufacturing back home.
Yeah, it is the greatest threat, I believe, to our country from a military standpoint. Congressman Mike Waltz, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.